The Center Square investigative reporter Adam Herbetz has been trying to find out how much in taxpayer money the Colorado Attorney General's office is spending on outside attorneys to sue the Trump administration and others. But the AG wants to charge the Center Square thousands of dollars to access these records. Joining me to discuss this is Adam Herbetz himself. Welcome, Adam.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for participating. When you initially asked for these records, they quoted you a figure in the hundreds of dollars. But then they came back and upped that to thousands. Tell us more.
Yeah, we're talking about a 17x increase here. That's rounded down, by the way, not rounded up. But $289.59 upgraded to $5,129.88. And the big question is, why the big paywall? I was asking that question even when we were talking about hundreds of dollars, especially because Phil Weiser has been talking about these lawsuits for a long time. We're talking about more than 60 lawsuits against the Trump administration. It was 66 when we started all this. We're up to 69 or 70, depending on how you count it now. And the full list is even kept behind a paywall. So it's a big part of his campaign for governor, and yet it doesn't seem like he wants us to have free access, at least, to knowing how much it's costing taxpayers.
Now, you tried to reach out to the Attorney General, Phil Weiser himself, which, as you noted, he's also running for governor as a Democrat in the state of Colorado. What happened specifically when you reached out to him?
Well, the hope was that because he's made this such a big part of his campaign, because it is literally the first thing on the Colorado Attorney General's office website, that he would say, you know what, we are allowed to grant a fee waiver or at the very least a fee reduction because these records are in the public interest. So we're going to do that. That's not what happened. He opened the email. We got the read receipt from our email inbox. He then forwarded it to one of his coworkers, and that coworker wrote back a pretty lengthy response, basically saying, and this is not a quote, this is me paraphrasing, but the essence of the email was, don't hate the player, hate the game. The Colorado Open Records Act does not require us to cap the fees in any way. The Colorado Open Records Act does not require us to even meet with you. It does not require us to answer your questions. And that's all a little bit discouraging when we're getting those same types of questions and lack of answers from the public information officer. It's literally in his title. His job is to provide public information, to work with the media on these types of requests. He's basically saying the law doesn't require me to do that.
Adam, one of the sources you talked to get reaction to this was former chair of the Colorado Republican Party, Dick Wadhams, who told you he was shocked that the AG's office won't just release the documents, given Weiser's been bragging about standing up to the Trump administration during his campaign for governor. What else did he and others have to say about this?
Yeah, you see it right there on your screen. He even used the D word. If Weiser's going to brag about all these lawsuits, he damn well ought to make the information public. He was upset, but there was also criticism from the left, especially before Weiser won his primary. His opponent in the primary was making comments along the lines of Colorado needs a governor, not a lawyer. Now, of course, after Bennett lost the primary, he stepped back and said we need to unite as a party, and he's going to endorse his Democratic counterpart. But the criticism is coming from the left, it's coming from the right, it's coming from the center. This is not really a partisan issue if you only look at it from the perspective of taxpayer money. Obviously, it becomes partisan if you start making decisions based off the fact that these are Trump lawsuits. But it doesn't matter whether they're Trump lawsuits or if they're other lawsuits. This is public government. These are public records. And by putting a $5,000 plus price tag on public records, it's basically telling the public that unless you got a whole lot of money, you're not going to get to find out what happens in your own government.
Adam, one last question for you. How do public record laws in Colorado compare to other states?
Well, obviously it depends. We actually published a map in our article. If you go to thecentersquare.com and read and scroll down and see that map, there are a large number of states, particularly neighboring states to Colorado, that require the government to, at the very least, work in good faith with requesters to help them identify records, to help them figure out how to get records maybe at a less expensive price tag if it is a large number of records. That doesn't happen in Colorado. And in fact, in Colorado, the Colorado Freedom of Information Coalition, who we interviewed in this story, they talked about comparing it to Ohio, where their stance is it's already their job to be transparent. We have the First Amendment for a reason. These are already government employees being paid a salary to provide public records. So why add an additional price tag on top of it? Obviously, Colorado feels differently. And that's why the Colorado Assistant Attorneys General will send emails saying the law doesn't require us to work with you. So either pay the price tag or drop the request.
Thank you, Adam, for your coverage on this story. You can read more at thecentersquare.com.